Good Purim Bublas. I want to talk about the missing and murdered Indigenous women whose stories have been silenced forever.
Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky, there I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand, you and me.
That violence comes from us. That violence came from white people.
Growing up, non-Indigenous men would come to my neighborhood and stalk Indigenous women. I was 7 years old when a man tried to take me from the park. My body knew I was in danger, and I told a quick lie and I ran away to safety. But that was just the beginning. Today, we honor all those missing and murdered Indigenous people. We need to do a better job to come together and protect marginalized communities. We need to do better.
These women and their stories don't garner half as much national attention as a white woman with the same sort of story would. The few Native women that we have heard about or that are famous to this day, their stories are completely falsified, romanticized, colonized.
Pocahontas was a real child. Her name was Matoaka, and she was only 14 when the colonizers basically took her from her fucking people. They took her to fucking England, had babies with her, and then she died at like the age of 20, and they didn't even bring her back to where she was originally from. They just buried her in England. She is one of the first documented MMIWs.
Matoaka is the daughter of the chief of the Powhatan tribe. Matoaka was 14 and she had to choose a new name for a ritual. I should have looked deeper into it. I'm not sure what the purpose of that was for. If anyone knows, please let me know. I would love to learn more. And she chose Pocahontas to honor her mother. So she met, fell in love, and married Kokowam, who was the son of another chief. Had their first son, and they were living in his village with his family and tribe. And Native people would dress accordingly for the different seasons. So in the summertime, usually they would keep their chests bare, and this included women of the tribe. So they would have their breasts showing, and children of the tribe would usually wear very little to nothing at all. And this meant nothing to the Native people. English settlers and colonizers would come in and harm the women and children in the tribes because they were so exposed. Children were the main targets of these English colonizer men. Native women would often offer themselves to these men to protect the children. Of course, the English government did nothing to protect these people, and men and chiefs and the tribes in general were threatened with more violence for trying to do anything about it. And in Jamestown, in the English settlers district, there was a lot of rumors and threats going around that they were going to kidnap Matoaka. And I think this was because they were fucking obsessed with her. And they were obsessed with her, I'm going to guess, mostly because of the absolute lies that John Smith had written about her and his time with her father's tribe, where he had said that she had saved his life. His life was never in danger. He was actually being honored by her father's tribe, and the ritual they were using to honor him she wasn't invited to because she was like 8 years old. Children weren't invited to those rituals. She wasn't even there. She did not have any kind of relationship with John Smith. Again, there was no romantic relationship because he was like 40 and she was 8. Ew. They were not friends. They did not have a friendship. She probably saw him in passing, probably only knew her as the chief's daughter. So because of all this bullshit, the settlers were fucking obsessed with her, and also with her being the chief's daughter. I'm sure that had some kind of political hold to it. I don't know. So a colonist called Captain Samuel Argall came into the Potawatomi village, and he demands of the chief, Kocoum's brother, he demands that they give up Pocahontas. And he's like, I'm no. But Argall threatens him and his whole tribe with extreme violence, and also says that he's only taking her away for a tiny bit of time. I think he said that he was trying to protect her from these other people that wanted to kidnap her. He gave her up. And during this exchange, Argall gave him a copper pot. And then he went and wrote in his notes and his journals and everything about the event that he traded Pocahontas or he traded the pot for Pocahontas, and that this was a deal between the men. This has been proven not to be true. This is absolutely not true, but that has become the story. And it's also the story with, there's so many stories of like a trading between the natives and the English colonizers. That wasn't trading. We were stealing from them. Like John Smith, when he was there, he would come into villages and hold a gun up to the chief's head or up to the warriors' heads and demand corn. There was no trade. He stole it. He took it by force. Pocahontas was not traded. Her people did not trade her for a copper pot. She was forcibly taken. She had to give up her son, of course, to women of the tribe. So she never saw her son again. Her husband comes home after this, not knowing what happened, and is immediately murdered by Argall's men. And she is knowing none of this. She is stuck on a ship. She was very depressed, obviously. They allowed her sister and her sister's husband to come on ship and talk to her. And that is when she confessed to her sister that she had been raped. Rape and sexual assault was so incredibly rare, basically unheard of in these tribes, especially in the Powhatan tribe, because it was considered such a disgusting and heinous crime that punishment for this was banishment. They were horrified that this happened to her. But again, there was not much that they could do because the English controlled everything. They had so much power and control over these people. And then they did take her to England, where she was held captive, and they tried to Christianize her. So this meant that they abused her, raped her, forcibly taught her English, forcibly had her baptized, and changed her name to Rebecca. In one of the rapings, she got pregnant. She was then married off against her will to John Rolfe. Then with John Rolfe, she had, I believe, 2 more children. She died very early. I believe she was like 20, maybe 22 when she died. Her body was never returned to her family, so they could not do the proper rituals and proper burials, which is so important. There are so many cultures in the Jewish and Hebrew cultures where burying your dead is such an important and sacred practice. I didn't even get that. And I could honestly do a whole other video on Matoaka and how much the white colonizers benefited from her abduction, from her rape, from her abuse, from everything. They and John Rolfe benefited so much, and honestly, our society still benefits from these atrocities done to a young girl. Now, let's talk about Sacagawea. Sacagawea was a Shoshone girl, I should say. She was very young. She was 12 when she was kidnapped by her tribe. So they sold her off to a French Canadian colonizer to be one of his many native wives. He already had many native wives, and he had like a whole tribe of native wives that he never actually got his hands dirty. He didn't kidnap any of these women. He just bought them from people who kidnapped them. So again, this goes back to native on native violence. They kidnapped her to trade off to a colonizer. Lewis and Clark came to the area. They were planning an expedition, and so they hired her captor to be their interpreter. But here's the thing. They had to go to Sacagawea's original tribe to talk to the chiefs about trading with them for horses and supplies and such so they could get through the mountains. The only problem was Sacagawea's abductor didn't speak that language. So he brought Sacagawea with him, and she was pregnant at the time. Again, if you need to hear it, she was 12. 12. Do you know a 12-year-old girl? Your daughter, sister, cousin, you know a 12-year-old? Go look at them right now. She was 12. She actually had to go with them back to her village to her brother, who was the chief, and stand with these colonizers who had kidnapped, held her captive, and raped her and abused her, and she was pregnant with one of their children. She had to go there and stand with these men in front of her brother, the chief, while they asked for horses. And she had to translate for them. That's how deep these colonizers' power was. Like, so even when white people try to argue with me and be like, oh, well, native tribes would do this to other native tribes, like, was this pre-colonization or post-colonization? That's an important distinction. During this expedition, she actually ended up giving birth. Want to take a second? You have been kidnapped. You have been raped. You are now pregnant. And then you are forced to go on this arduous expedition when you are pregnant, and then you go into birth at this expedition. Like, do you think they took care of her in any way? Most likely not. And then as soon as she popped out that baby, guess what they did? Went right back on the road. Any woman who has given birth knows how fucking traumatic that is. It is a traumatic thing that you're putting your body through. And she had to go through this against her will in an unsafe environment, away from her family and tribe. And then she had to get right back up and continue on this trip and do whatever she can to help her rapist and her rapist friends. Ooh, it should be known. I'm probably going to say his name wrong, but I don't care that much. Charbonneau, you know, Sacagawea's abuser, rapist, and father of the child that she was forced to have, that man, he was a fucking idiot. So he actually single-handedly capsized their boat they were in. So Sacagawea had to help Lewis and Clark get everyone out alive. And again, she had her son at this time, so her son is strapped to her. And she's helping with them get them out of this situation while her husband, her rapist, is a fucking idiot, not doing anything. She was the only one who calmly was able to go back and retrieve all of these books and notes and papers that we still study today when we talk about Lewis and Clark and when we talk about this expedition. And in honor of Sacagawea and all the work she did for them, they named a little piece of that river after her. Isn't that so nice of them? Isn't that like so kind of Lewis and Clark? I mean, honestly, personally, I would have asked as a reward to be returned to my village, start the healing process, and also ask them not to name things that don't belong to them. But hey, that's just me. And Sacagawea. I'm sure she would have wanted that too. She did a lot for them on this trip. Like, not only was she very helpful in interpreting for other tribes, she actually kept them safe from other tribes while they traveled, because they would see white colonizers, think maybe we should attack, but then they see a native woman with a baby strapped to her, and they won't want to harm the woman or her baby, so they'll leave the party alone. And so they were able to safely travel without any trouble. They were able to talk to these people and get the things that they need because they had an interpreter, Sacagawea. She helped them find the edible plants and berries so they didn't die. So she was very fucking helpful. They weren't helpful. Lewis and Clark, especially Clark, became very fond of her. There are stories that they were romantically involved, but that hasn't really been proven, and I don't think that's true. Do I think that Clark ever raped her? I don't think so, but anything is possible. Tell me what you think. After she died, her husband wanted nothing to do with the child, and so Clark, the child came to live with him for a while, and he also paid to put him in the best schools and everything, so he really took care of the child. But, like, thanks for doing the bare fucking minimum. Like, that you don't get a reward for that. You still benefited from this young girl's abduction and rape and trauma and abuse, and you were still abusing her by forcing her on this trip and by not getting her help and getting her back to her people. You were just as much an abuser as her rapist. So, like, I'm not giving you anything, you fucking asshole. Again, I mean, I can go on and on about the story of Sacagawea and how, again, colonizers benefited from a child's abduction, rape, and abuse, and how to this day we still benefit from that abduction, rape, and abuse of a child. Let's move on. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go light for a second. This is a very pretty color. And it's funny because Purim this year falls on St. Patrick's Day. So it fits. And also tomorrow will be the 6-year anniversary of my best friend's suicide. And her favorite color was green. So we're honoring a lot right now. It's very pretty. I like it. I really love this.
My mom, Olivia Lonebear, went missing October 24th, 2017. So I was in my room and I had heard her about to leave. She was talking to my brother JC, and then she said that she would be back later on the same night. She did not come back. We had met with some detectives, and they kind of just tried to convince me that she was fine, that she had gone somewhere and she'd be back. They tried saying she was getting eloped with someone, that she just needed a break, or just stuff like that to try not to worry us, but we didn't really believe it.
So the police who were investigating this missing Indigenous woman told her young children, oh, don't worry, she's probably just out getting married. And not to worry them? No, I think it was being like, well, I don't want to actually look into this, so don't worry about it, she's fine. It was just more excuses and more reason not to do anything. Olivia Lone Bear. Olivia was a 33-year-old mother from the Fort Berthold Reservation. She went missing in October of 2017. Her case was never taken seriously. Up to the family and the Native community to investigate on their own and lead their own searches. So they did their own searches, and the search went on for like 10 months. And finally, they found her body strapped in the front seat of a truck that was fully submerged in a lake in North Dakota. They said no obvious injuries were on her body, and after an autopsy, they still claimed to not be able to identify the cause of death. This case has never been solved, and honestly, it seems that the police or FBI they weren't really trying to find any information at all. Like the video said, like her daughter said, they were just like waving her off, like, ugh, it's fine. Because no one fucking cares about Native people. Like, if this was a white woman, it would be a completely different fucking story. And as we're sitting here in Women's History Month, and we as feminists, as white feminists, are fighting so hard for our rights, but we still have exponentially more rights than Native women and women of color. That's why intersectionalism is so important to keep in feminism, because you can't forget race. 'Cause I'd never treat me this shitty. You made me hate this city. And I don't talk shit about you. Jennifer Ketchway, June 19th, 2008, was her 18th birthday. And the last her family heard from her was a call that she made where she said she would be coming back home to Manitoba's Portage La Prairie to celebrate her birthday, but she never made it. And they thought this call, of course, came from Portage La Prairie because she said she was hanging out with some friends. But apparently she was in Grand Rapids, which is about 2 hours from her home in Portage La Prairie. And this is all in Manitoba, Canada, if you don't know. So she never made it home. When her family went to the police, they did not take it very seriously. They said because she was 18, she was probably like on a drunken bender adventure. Her family knew this was bullshit because they said Jennifer was always super responsible. She would leave notes for her family. She was always where she said she would be. She was always back when she said she would be back. She was always calling in. She was a very responsible girl, and she was not this huge party person, whatever. Of course, the family and the tribe were searching around Portage La Prairie for weeks. So a month into her being missing, her family went up to Grand Rapids and they spoke to the Grand Rapids police. And Jennifer's mother said the police hadn't taken any statements. They hadn't talked to anyone. They hadn't investigated at all. This is 30 days gone. She has been missing for 30 days and they never took it seriously. They did not search for her at all. This is another one where I could not find like any information. All the information I found was the same thing over and over, which is just what I repeated to you. Every year on her birthday, they have a celebration and they search for her. It has been 14 years. It has been 14 years since this Indigenous woman went missing. And the police have done nothing. Her family is searching all over for her or any information, and none has been found. In 2018, they said a witness came forward, but that's all I know. Like, I don't really know anything else. I can't find any fucking information on these cases. Except for this next one. Oh my god, are you kidding me? Where do you think I learned all this shit from? It's just a cigarette, and it cannot be that bad.
Honey, don't you love me, and you know it makes me sad.
It's just a cigarette.
Serena McKay. This is the only MMIW story that I could find that actually had the proper information. Like, I found the full story. Serena McKay was a 19-year-old First Nations girl in Powerview, Pine Falls in Manitoba. So again, this is Canada. She was invited to a house party, and while she was there, after about 1:30 in the morning, she had gotten into some kind of fight or argument with two other girls there that went to her school. These two girls took her out back, and there was also a man with them who later on officials believed to be one of the girls' boyfriends, and his voice was heard on the recording, but he was never charged with anything. You heard me right, recording. This murder was recorded by one of the girls. And again, these girls are 17 to 19. I just want to make that clear as well. Lene Cook was recording the whole thing on her phone while Chrissy Jacobs repeatedly hit Serena while she cried out for them to stop. Lene stomped on Serena's face. And then after a while, the beatings, when Serena was dead, the man was heard saying, "She's done." And then they stripped her naked. And the man stole her phone and her purse. And they all went back in the house and continued the party. And Chrissy actually Snapchatted a friend of hers still covered in Serena's blood with the caption, "Just chilling." So the next day, Lene posted the video. Video went viral, of course. Serena's body was finally found. So Lene pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and is serving 7 years, while Chrissy received 3 years for manslaughter. She claimed she struggles with PTSD and alcoholism, which came from being sexually assaulted. In the TikTok we saw, the sound at the beginning of it is from a film called 13, which honestly is a great film. Go watch it. But it has nothing to do with this, but the words, "Where do you think I learned it from?" That kind of violence is colonizer violence. It is taught through violence. It is taught through oppression and systematic racism. That would not have come to be. These girls would have grown up very differently. They would not be dead or incarcerated. And this is the only case I found where I found anything. This is the only MMIW case I found that was actually talked about and actually garnered attention. I wonder why.
Call 911! Call 911!
I need everything to stop.
You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be okay. You'll be okay. You know my baby. You know my baby.
Way oh high oh hey, when I way
rest your head tonight. There's no need to worry, there's no need to cry. I'll be right here all through the night, holding you tight, singing you sweet little lullabies.
The first video we saw was kind of behind the scenes of the second video we saw, where she explained in her caption that while she was filming that video and the parts where she had to film kind of like flashbacks of what happened, she started receiving actual flashbacks, and that's why we hear her screaming out. I want to say she's one of the lucky ones to be home. But that trauma never really leaves you. And her story, like so many stories of her sisters, go untalked about, go unsolved. There is no justice for them. That is Emily Risling or Risling. Emily is a 33-year-old woman who was last seen walking across a bridge this past October. As her sister has talked about how frustrated she is that Emily's case is not getting any mainstream media attention, and the police don't seem to care because apparently Emily also struggles with mental illness and has been picked up many times over the years by police for I'm not sure what. But. So Emily's sister has expressed her frustrations. She said they can pick her up for all of these things and criminalize her, but they can't help her. The Yurok tribe that she is a part of has declared a state of emergency. They're calling to California. Asking for them to form a comprehensive database of cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Her sister Mary Risling said, "We'd reached out to the BIA for support and other federal organizations, and until the Sheriff's Department classifies it as a cold case, federal organizations can't help. We all feel helpless." If you see anything or know anything, they are asking you to reach out to call Hoopa Tribal Police Dispatch, and I'll put that number right here. That's 530-625-4202. I'm going to be like one of those infomercials, 530-625-4202. So make sure to call that number and reach out if you know anything about Emily. Boost her story any way and anywhere you can.
So we grew attached to the tragic flaws that they hide true. You're enough, you're enough, you're enough. I promise you're enough, you're enough, you're enough. I promise you're enough, you're enough,
You can go to the MMIW website, which I'll put here. You can go to this GoFundMe to support that specific family, learn about what's going on, learn about what has happened, and will continue to happen if we don't amplify these people's voices. Because a big privilege we have as white people is we are more easily heard. And that is the truth. And it is truth that I want to change. Bring Emily home, bring justice for all of these women that we spoke about. Never again will we dishonor the names of Matawaka or Sacagawea, because they were scared Indigenous girls who were stolen and raped and abused, and we still to this day benefit as white people from this abuse. We benefit as Jewish Americans who came from wherever you came from, whether you were kicked out of your homes, whether you were fleeing war. We came to this land, the land of the free, that was stolen, that was built on the backs of women like Matawaka and Sacagawea and all of these girls and women's names we don't speak. Thank you and good Purim.